Hello everyone, Doc here from Chaos Crew. I just wanted to do a little video talking about kind of traditional open face helmets. I've had a few conversations recently with one of our club members that's actually, kind of really got into wearing a kind of traditional open face, and I think there's some bits about that actually people might not know about. So I guess this is from a perspective of someone that's worn open face helmets riding bikes for quite a lot of years. Both the kind of more traditional type ones and what I think of as more a kind of touring open face where it's got a built-in visor and what have you. And it's one of those things, there may just be bits here that are useful, so feel free to ignore this if that's not what you're interested in, but people may find this useful. It's probably worth starting off with 2 points though. Why do I wear open face helmets? I just find them more comfortable. There's something about the enclosure of an open face helmet that I find, I guess, slightly claustrophobic. I wouldn't want to overstate it. I've got a flip front helmet that I use sometimes, but to be honest, I very rarely actually use it just because I don't feel as comfortable in it as I do with some of the other helmets that I've got. I do use what I think of as a kind of touring open face quite a lot for longer rides, and what I think of as a more traditional open face, this being my kind of current one, really for most of my riding, to be honest. So, as someone that's actually used that for a long time, and finds them more comfortable, one of the questions that comes up every so often is safety, and it's just worth being really honest about this one. An open face helmet is never going to be as safe in the event of a crash as a full face. You'll find some people that argue the toss on that one. You'll find some people that will talk about specific situations where, whether that's about the weight or the potential for a chin piece kind of adding to the amount of force twisting on a neck or what have you, they'll talk about situations where an open face would be safer. The reality is the vast majority of the time you're safer in an open face. Where they've looked at accidents where there has been impact of a helmet, which not all accidents do, but where there are, about 30% of them are on areas which are covered if you're wearing an open face and aren't covered if you're wearing, covered if you're wearing a full face and not covered if you're wearing an open face. I think that's something you just have to accept if you're doing this and think about actually how we're going to, whether or not you're willing to take that risk. At the end of the day, we're motorcyclists. We all know that we'd be much safer driving a car. So actually this is something that you balance up in the same way that you think about what clothing you wear, etc., and how you balance that with your riding style, etc. And as I say, so I'm not going to go into that further in this. But if you are interested in wearing an open face, I guess that's where I'm kind of looking at. The next thing to think about is the fact that you can get open face helmets very cheaply. You can get them for like 25-30 quid. Most people I know that have had a cheap helmet have found it really dissatisfying and stopped using it fairly quickly, for two primary reasons. One is that they tend not to be all that comfortable, and the other is that they tend to look really weird on people. They tend to have this big bobblehead, mushroom head look, because to get through a cheap helmet actually passing the safety regulations, they tend to use lots of padding. They also tend to have one shell size, which is whatever the shell size for the minimum amount of padding they need to pass for the largest head size they do, and then they just add more padding down on kind of smaller sizes. So some of it's aesthetics, some of it's comfort, but a lot of people that try a cheaper one actually don't find that they like it all that much. Personally, I kind of used a couple of those and then mainly used flip faces until I kind of first time I actually got a decent quality one, which was one of these. This is Lindsay's kind of summer helmet. This is a Daytona Cruiser, which I think most of the people that have bought them in this country have got them from Fat Skeleton. They're about 100 quid, I think. Yeah, really comfortable, really light, and really low profile as well. It actually sits down on your head quite well, so that actually, whilst there is, the really thin helmets tend to not be ones that actually are rated as safety helmets because actually they don't have enough padding to be safe. But actually, kind of, it's got quite a low profile to it, and I've got to say, I found it really comfortable. My one of these actually has been kind of retired now because I wore it like kind of as my go-to helmet for probably 3 or 4 years, until I replaced it with one of the others that I've got here to mention. That bit of comfort is really important, and that's actually quite individual as well. As anyone knows that's tried on helmets, different manufacturers use slightly different head shapes. It's recognised that some people have got a rounder kind of, if you look at the skull from the top, have got a rounder profile. Some people have got a much more elongated oval profile. And so actually you'll see them often described as kind of almost a round profile, a long oval or an intermediate oval for the ones that sit in between. I'm certainly in that intermediate oval kind of area. And kind of the first kind of really high quality helmet I bought was this one. It's a Bell. I can't remember what they call their kind of open face, but it's the classic kind of it's just kind of it's their classic kind of open face. It's a really nice one, this one as well. I got a really good deal on it, and it's kind of carbon fibre and what have you, so I kind of was very excited when I got this, expecting to replace my using my Daytona Cruiser with it, and actually it was just never quite as comfortable. I think it's a slightly rounder head profile than that one. I've never thrown it out because actually it's kind of a lovely helmet, it's really nicely lined, etc. And every so often I try it on again and think, helmets do tend to wear into your head shape a little bit as time goes on. So actually, maybe one of these days I'll find it's kind of become comfortable for me. But actually, as I say, as far as higher quality ones go, actually I stuck with my Daytona Cruiser until I got around to trying on one of these. This, as I said before, is kind of my current go-to kind of open face. It's by a company called Davida. Worth saying, they're harder to pick up now. You kind of, since the COVID and what have you, they kind of have massively ramped back production, and I think you have to special order them now, which I suspect has put the price up, and they were fairly expensive to start off with. What I can say about that, though, despite being a very kind of traditional looking helmet, is it's beautifully made. It's about the most comfortable helmet I've ever worn, and the bit that's really remarkable on it, I think, is how well it deals with kind of sound insulation. It's as quiet as really almost every full face helmet I've ever worn. Going at speed in that, it's superb. In fact, the only downside is that it's harder if people are trying to talk to you when you're wearing it, because actually it's really good sound insulation. I think part of that is around the helmet shape. It comes in quite strongly onto the chin, onto the cheeks, so you actually kind of have to lever the sides apart slightly. I mean, that's true of a lot of traditional open faces when you're kind of putting it on to actually get it to sit on there. But a beautiful helmet to wear, and I've been really enjoying that one. Enough so that I've actually worn it for some of our touring stuff as well. When the club went and did the Snowdonia 360 last July, actually I took that. Though that does get us on to talking about accessories, because I did put a visor on it, etc. for doing that one. So, I mean, there's quite a variety out there in terms of decent quality helmets. I'd look for something that's comfortable. I'd look for something that's reasonably low profile as well, simply because there's that issue that people don't always talk about with open faces, that you can actually get quite a lot of lift on it when you're going at speed on one, particularly on an unfaired bike. The aerodynamics on some of them are not that well managed, and actually they kind of almost try and lift off of your head if you're not kind of careful with that. So actually something that is a bit lower profile and actually is a bit more comfortable is really good. Worth saying that given that Davida are not easy to find, if I was looking for a high quality open face at the moment, I'd probably try Hedon. The Hedon Hedonist is a really good quality open face for people that aren't put off by the fact that you're sort of spending 300 quid on an open face helmet. You do get what you pay for to some degree, though. It is worth saying. So as I say, horses for courses. but look at what you're getting, try it on, make sure you've got a good fit for your head, and actually that it's really kind of comfortable on there. And obviously it's still a decent rated helmet. That's kind of almost the smallest bit I wanted to talk about in terms of what helmets are out there. The bit that I think people don't always think about is if you've got a traditional open face, there's some interesting issues about how you then use it in terms of what you put on with it. Yeah. First thing that's come up in conversation relatively recently is about kind of eye protection. At the point where you're riding with an open face, if you haven't put some form of visor on it, obviously your face is open to the wind. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the attractions of them actually, is that particularly in summer where you've got nicer weather, you feel very much part of what's around you. You don't feel that sense of isolation that you get when you're looking at everything through a screen. I know bikes have already got an advantage on that compared to a car where you're actually surrounded by this cage, but actually there's very little as good as actually being out there with kind of almost feeling like there's nothing between you and the outside world. Most people wear something like wraparound sunglasses. I've kind of bought these into show just because actually these are you can get these incidentally in sort of sunglass shades, or you can get them in amber tints or what have you. These ones are polarized, but actually are clear ones. They were just the first ones I could find. These are not just normal sunglasses. These are made of safety glasses. One of the problems you've got if you're wearing a normal, particularly if it's cheap sunglasses, is if something hits you at speed, a bit of grit or something, it can punch straight through that that kind of eye lens on a traditional sunglasses, because they're not really rated for that. They're not developed for that. The first thing I'd advise anyone to do if you're going to wear an open face is actually make sure you've got proper impact rated glasses, and they're really easy and really cheap to get because they're also used as work glasses. These were about £8 or something like that, I think. As I say, I got 3 pairs because I got an amber pair and a black pair in these, and so really easy to do. Now, worth recognising though that actually you're still going to get some wind coming around the sides of these. Wraparound shades are quite good for giving your eyes a bit more protection from wind, but particularly if you're talking about a situation where you've got quite cold wind, you'll still get eyes watering, and then it kind of gets onto your lashes and you get messing up the inside of the lenses really, really easily. So if you can get wraparound glasses with, let's just hold that in. There's kind of a foam seal around this. You will find that they give you much more protection from the wind. Now, I think these look a little bit more like goggles than glasses in some ways, but actually these are ones that I particularly got with prescription lenses, because as you see I wear glasses. Actually these have got prescription lenses in them, so they also correct my vision. And give me really good kind of protection from wind and what have you. These are what I use a lot when I'm wearing an open face in the summer. The difference between ones with a seal around your face and ones that don't have a seal around your face can be irrelevant on a warm afternoon where you're pottering around the hills. It can be, I think the phrase used recently was a game changer when someone tried one of those on a cold day compared to having something that was more open. Yeah, so it can make a real difference there. The other thing that you can think about doing instead of that is wearing goggles. Yeah, these are the ones that I use a fair bit. These are airfoil ones. I have to say though, I went into a shop and I tried on a number of different pairs. The reason I got these was because I was looking for something that fit fairly neatly over my glasses, so I can actually wear these with my glasses on the helmet, and particularly once it's stretched over the helmet, actually it fits really neatly across there. Again, lots of foam here, so actually it seals all the way around, and you get very, very little wind coming in there. On a cold day, if you're standstill, actually sometimes you get a little bit of fog building up there, which is unhelpful. Though more normally on the glass than on the goggles. So you know, kind of, it's a really good seal there, and you're not going to get any wind coming in and kind of eyes watering and so forth. Again, you can get those in a whole different variety. These are my partner's ones. This is with an amber lens. This one came actually with 3 different lenses, so it came with clear, amber and black lenses, which is a lovely kind of kind of package to get. The other thing that I kind of, when I'm wearing an open face, if I'm riding moderate distance in summer, as well as having impact rated decent kind of glasses that fit on there, on the helmet, is that I tend to use a peak. One of the things that people don't always think about with the traditional open face is these 3 studs at the front actually mean that you can clip other things onto them. I don't mind the look of a peak actually, though some people really dislike it. The bit though, practically, is it's brilliant for keeping the sun out of your eyes. At a point where you've got something here kind of shading you, particularly at the end of the day where you've got low sun there, is really, really useful for just shading and keeping the sun out of your eyes. I found that more useful than something where, like a helmet which has got like a black visor that flicks down just in front of your glasses, because this kind of totally shields you from the sun. So worth thinking about and worth again kind of experimenting with. The other bit that's worth really thinking about as well is the possibility of using a visor to extend the use of these helmets. When I used that Davida for going off on a longer kind of 4-day trip last year, I put a one of these on. Now this actually isn't the one that I had then, it's a slightly higher quality one that I've recently got to replace it. It's okay, so you've got like a peak with a visor attached and the visor goes up and down, so it's like having a visor on a traditional helmet. You can kind of use that. I think these look seriously ugly, if I'm honest, but they're really, really useful. At that point you've turned your bike into your helmet into something that's much more practical for doing distance, etc. Compared to a built-in visor in a good quality helmet, it's not quite as good. You will get more leakage of air around, and you will always, with stuff that's actually attached to helmets like this, actually get some rattling where the where it's kind of clipped on. How noisy that is varies a little bit. I've got to say, with wind noise, with a decent quality one that fits you well, so you're not getting too much noise coming in, it's not really that noticeable to me. But you know, again, your experience may vary. And just being worth being aware that we've got that potential for it, a kind of rattling a little bit. The bigger issue, I think, than the sound is that kind of leakage of air around. If I'm talking about kind of really cold air, again, I can get enough wind in there. If there's a strong side wind particularly, if there isn't, actually it's pretty good, but if there's a strong side wind, I can get some wind leaking in the sides and again get that bit where I start watering, etc, etc. The other thing that's actually probably worth saying about this is, because I do wear open faces, of traditional open faces, you know, plenty of times in the winter, I've got that situation where these are a large enough, you know, kind of shield that you can, again, in cold weather, steam them up by breathing on them. Not an issue in summer, so if you only ever wear an open face in summer, I wouldn't worry about this. But what I've actually done on this one is fit, as I did on my previous one, a Fog City insert. It's a bit like the Pinlock ones, you know, it's one of those anti-fog inserts. But they're brilliant. If you notice, the bottom of that is misted up and just clearing, and the centre of it didn't mist up at all. They are really, really resistant to misting. So I think they're a brilliant kind of, if you're going to use stuff in cold weather, I think they're a brilliant kind of device. Your other option, rather than that peak and kind of raising and lowering type one, is something like this bubble visor that that Lindsay uses on that Daytona helmet. Bubble visors are interesting. They've got, that bubble actually means that you've got a real sense of space here, and it doesn't distort at all, because actually wherever you're looking through it flat, if you like. So actually you get less distortion with this, I find, than you do with a traditional visor, unless you're looking right through the rim where it kind of curves out here. They're also better than a traditional visor than a kind of traditional visor on an open face, managing the air around it. Actually, the way they're curved actually tends to channel air away from things. I think these are really good, but they do have one big drawback, that actually you can't. They're not kind of raisable. You know, it's kind of on there. It's not that close to you. I mean, they sit kind of out about kind of here when you got kind of a helmet on with one, but they're not something you can raise and lower as easily. There are lots of other options, but actually, just as I say, just talking about some of the options that I've used seems potentially useful for people. So where do we go? Open face is your traditional open face, not quite as safe as a full face. Probably the best in terms of just feeling that you are riding without anything impeding your kind of sensation of being there with what's around you. Worth thinking about how you're going to protect your eyes, both from impact and from wind, and making sure you've got something appropriate from that. And you've got a whole range of options that you can use there in terms of adding goggles or visors or so forth to give yourself more significant protection. Oh, I didn't mention with goggles, most but not all open face helmets come with a goggle strap on the back. That's actually quite useful, because goggles you tend to put up when you're kind of stopped or just kind of around really low speed, and then put down when you kind of get going. When they're up, they can kind of ping off, so it's quite useful having something that means if they do ping off, they aren't going to disappear entirely. They're still going to be hanging there on the helmet. So, any questions? Let me know, and I hope that was useful. Bye, everyone.